At 3:10 a.m. on July 17, 1959, as Lady Day took her final breath, Nurse Martha Williams noticed her lips moving. Just minutes before Billie Holiday died, she trembled as she whispered something into Martha's ear. In Manhattan, under the streetlight, behind the flower shop, these words would never leave Martha's mind, because the next day, newspapers reported that Lady Day had died penniless. But Nurse Martha knew that somewhere, $100,000 treasure was keeping Billie Holiday's final secret. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss this incredible treasure hunt story. In that sterile room on the fourth floor of Metropolitan Hospital, Martha Williams had never experienced anything like this in her 15-year nursing career. As Billie Holiday's vital signs were rapidly declining, there was a strange sparkle in Lady Day's eyes. It was as if she was dying to say something very important. When Martha approached Billie's bed, Billie's hands were gripping the sheets tightly, and her lips were moving almost imperceptibly. At that moment, only Martha and the dying jazz legend were in the room. FBI agents were waiting in the corridor. Doctors were coming and going for final checks, but in those critical moments, the room was silent. Billie Holiday's last words were a whisper low enough for only Martha to hear. In Manhattan, Lenox Avenue, 105th Street, under the streetlight, behind the flower shop, box, key, under the gardenia flower. When Martha heard these words, she didn't understand what they meant. Was Billie Holiday speaking in delirium, or was she really saying something important? But when she read the newspapers the next morning, she was shocked. The New York Times headline was clear: Lady Day dies broke. Jazz legend takes final breath in financial trouble. How could this be possible? Billie Holiday had performed in packed venues for years, sold millions of records. Martha Williams couldn't share Billie Holiday's final words with anyone. FBI agents were monitoring Lady Day's final moments at the hospital and constantly asking Martha questions. What did she say in her last hours? Did she want to call anyone? Did she mention any addresses? These questions troubled Martha because the agents were looking for the same thing: Billie Holiday's hidden money. In the days when Billie Holiday died, there was strange activity in New York's music circle. Old friends, music producers, and even strangers were visiting Lady Day's house. They were all looking for the same thing: the money Billie had accumulated over the years. Because everyone knew that Lady Day had never trusted banks and kept all her money in cash. Louis McKay, Billie's last husband, searched the apartment thoroughly, but found nothing. Neighbors, however, told interesting details, especially Mrs. Rodriguez, who said she often saw Billie leaving the house with large bags at night in recent months. What were these bags carrying, and where was Billie taking them? According to Mrs. Rodriguez, Billie always walked in the same direction, toward Lenox Avenue. But Billie Holiday's fortune wasn't just from concert earnings. From the mid-1940s, Lady Day had acquired very powerful protectors. Among these protectors were not only figures from the music world, but also political figures, and even people from organized crime organizations. They all regularly gave Billie Holiday protection money. Frank Sinatra was one of Billie Holiday's most loyal supporters. Starting in 1947, he sent Lady Day $500 every month. This money was to support her against FBI pressure, because Sinatra was one of the rare artists who understood the importance of the strange fruit song. But the money Sinatra gave was only a small part of the support Lady Day received. Even more surprising was the secret support given to Billie Holiday by some political figures. In the 1950s, as the civil rights movement began to strengthen, some liberal politicians saw Lady Day as a symbolic figure. These people, who understood the power of the strange fruit song in the fight against racism, provided financial support to Billie so that her voice would not be silenced. The total of these supports amounted to approximately. The most mysterious support came from the Italian mafia in New York. Figures like Joe Colombo and Charles Luciano had taken Billie Holiday under their protection. The reason for this wasn't just their respect for Lady Day, but also their anger at the pressure the FBI was putting on Billie. Since mafia figures saw the FBI as an enemy, supporting Billie Holiday, who was targeted by the FBI, was a strategic move for them. Instead of depositing all this money in banks, Billie Holiday chose a very different method. There were reasons why Lady Day didn't trust the banking system. In the 1940s, the FBI constantly monitored Billie's bank accounts and viewed large money transfers with suspicion. This situation pushed Billie to seek alternative solutions. The solution came from an unexpected place. Billie Holiday's childhood friend Ruby Thompson ran a small flower shop in Harlem. Ruby's shop was on Lenox Avenue on 125th Street and had a small garden in the back. Billie and Ruby had trusted each other since childhood, and Ruby never questioned Billie's secret life. Starting in 1948, Billie Holiday began hiding her accumulated money at Ruby's flower shop. But this money wasn't inside the shop, it was buried in the back garden, under Ruby's gardenia flowers. In a specially prepared metal box lay Lady Day's fortune. The key to this box was in an even safer place, inside the gardenia flower that Billie always wore in her hair. This system worked perfectly for years. As Billie Holiday saved money, she would go to Ruby's shop at night and increase her fortune. By the time she died in 1959, approximately $100,000 had accumulated in this box. This money meant a tremendous fortune at that time, because it was equivalent to approximately $800. On the night of July 15, 1959, when Billie Holiday was hospitalized, dramatic events occurred that very few people knew about. That night, Lady Day was not only physically but also mentally extremely tense, because only she knew where her treasure was hidden, and she risked taking this secret to her grave. 3 mysterious visitors came to the hospital that night. The first was Ruby Thompson, Billie's florist friend. When Ruby came to Lady Day's side, there was deep concern in her eyes. "Billie, if something happens," she began to say, but Lady Day stopped her. "Ruby, you just take care of your shop. I'll handle the rest," she said. After this conversation, Ruby left the hospital, but worry was still on her face. The second visitor was Louis McKay. Although Louis was married to Billie, he knew very little about Lady Day's financial situation. Billie had never told him where she hid her money, and he didn't even know she had no bank account. That night, Louis asked Billie about this subject for the last time in the hospital room. "Billie, if something happens, where is the money? I couldn't find anything at home." Lady Day only answered him, "It's in a safe place." The third visitor was the most surprising. FBI agent James Morrison. Morrison had been following Billie Holiday for years and investigating Lady Day's sources of income. When he entered the hospital room that night, he asked Billie the same questions for the last time. "Miss Holiday, you have income sources we can't track. Where do you hide this money?" Billie Holiday gave no answer to the FBI agent, just closed her eyes. Because Martha Williams didn't fully understand what she experienced that night, she didn't take Billie Holiday's final words seriously. But a few days later, when she attended Lady Day's funeral, she grasped the seriousness of the situation. There were hundreds of people at the funeral, but everyone was asking the same question: what happened to Billie's money? After the funeral ceremony, Martha couldn't resist her curiosity and went to 105th Street, to Lenox Avenue. It wasn't hard to find the place Billie had described, because there was only one flower shop. Ruby Thompson's shop was right under the streetlight. When Martha stood in front of the shop, Ruby invited her inside and the two talked at length. Ruby Thompson told Martha about her friendship with Billie Holiday. She said that for years Lady Day had come to the shop, but never bought flowers. Instead, Billie always went to the back garden and spent time there. Ruby didn't find this strange, because she knew that Billie loved gardenia flowers very much. When Martha told Ruby about Billie's final words, Ruby's face paled with surprise. "Under the gardenia flower?" she asked. At that moment, both went to the back garden and looked at the soil under the gardenia flowers. There was a slight depression in the soil, as if something was buried underneath. But reaching the treasure wasn't that simple. Ruby Thompson was afraid of the legal situation, because if there really was money there, this situation could put her in a difficult position too. Martha, as a nurse, also didn't want to get involved in such a situation. Both wanted to find the money, but thought they needed to do it through legal means. What made the situation even more complicated was that other people were also looking for the same thing. Louis McKay began regularly visiting Ruby's shop and asking if Billie had hidden money there. FBI agent Morrison also visited the shop several times and tried to pressure Ruby. The most dangerous visitors were the mafia figures. Joe Colombo's men came to check the shop because they too wondered where the money they had given to Billie Holiday was. These visits scared Ruby and she began to be more cautious about finding the money. In the spring of 1960, Ruby Thompson finally made a decision. She decided to dig up the back garden at night with Martha Williams and find the money, but this decision would confront them with unexpected dangers. On a cold night in May 1960, Martha and Ruby went out to the back garden with flashlights and shovels. When they started digging the soil under the gardenia flowers, their hands were trembling. They found nothing in the first half hour, but then Martha's shovel hit something metal. What emerged from the soil was a small but heavy metal box. On the box was written BH 1948, Billie Holiday's initials and the year the box was buried, but the box was locked, and there was no key. Martha then remembered Billie Holiday's final words, "The key, under the gardenia flower." Ruby's shop had dried gardenia flowers, and among these were flowers that Billie Holiday had used in her last concerts. The two began examining these flowers one by one. Finally, Martha found a small metal key inside one of the flowers. This key fit the box perfectly. When they opened the box, they couldn't believe their eyes. Inside were thousands of dollars in bills, gold coins, and valuable jewelry. But more important than this was the notebook found inside the box. In this notebook was a detailed record of all the protection money that Billie Holiday had received over the years. Who gave what, when they gave it, why they gave it. Everything was written in detail. When they examined Billie Holiday's notebook in depth, Martha and Ruby were amazed at how systematic Lady Day was. Every money transfer was meticulously recorded, and there were explanations in abbreviations next to each record. FS, protection, $500, meant Frank Sinatra's monthly support. TB, friendship, $100,000 indicated the special donation from Tallulah Bankhead. The most surprising part of the notebook was that it showed Billie Holiday not only received this money, but also distributed it to others. Lady Day gave some of the support she received as aid to other musicians in Harlem, poor families, and even other artists under FBI pressure. These records showed that Billie Holiday wasn't just thinking about her own safety, but was supporting the entire social struggle. One of the most interesting details was that Billie Holiday had also given money to some famous names. In the 1950s, she had provided financial support to some artists accused of being communist sympathizers. This situation showed how brave Lady Day was, because helping such people could attract even more FBI attention. The notebook also contained Billie Holiday's future plans. Before Lady Day died, she was planning to use this money to open a music school in Harlem. This school wouldn't just provide music education, but would also give young Black musicians awareness about social rights. She had made detailed plans for the school project and had even begun determining the teaching staff. After Morrison's records in the notebook were discovered, Martha and Ruby understood how closely the FBI had been following Billie Holiday. Agent Morrison hadn't just monitored Lady Day, he had also sympathized with her and secretly began giving her money. This situation revealed the contradictions within the FBI. The amount of money Morrison gave was small at first, only $50 per month, but over time, this amount increased, and by 1958, it had reached $200 per month. According to Morrison's notes, he was giving this money from his own salary, and his supervisor didn't know about it. Morrison had even made various maneuvers to prevent Billie Holiday's arrest by the FBI. This situation put Morrison in a very risky position. If the FBI learned that Morrison was helping Billie Holiday, the agent's career would be over. He might even become the subject of investigation himself. But Morrison loved Billie Holiday's music and struggle so much that he found this risk worth taking. One of the most striking details in the notebook was the date of the last money Morrison gave to Billie Holiday, July 10, 1959, just 5 days before Lady Day was hospitalized. This last payment was $500, and Morrison's note said, "Final support." It was as if Morrison also sensed that Billie was going to die. The support given to Billie Holiday by mafia figures like Joe Colombo and Charles Luciano was also quite systematic. This money wasn't just protection money, but also to support Lady Day's artistic freedom. Mafia figures appreciated Billie Holiday's courage to sing Strange Fruit and wanted to financially support this courage. The support Colombo gave usually came in large amounts. Every 3 months he would give 2,000, 3,000, and the men who brought this money would tell Billie greetings from the boss. In return for this money, Colombo wanted nothing, just for Billie Holiday to continue with music. Luciano's approach was different. He saw Billie Holiday like family friends and provided not only money, but also physical protection. Luciano's men would come to Lady Day's concerts, move among the audience, and make sure there were no threats. This protection was especially important for concerts in the South, because racist groups were threatening Billie Holiday. According to the records in the notebook, thanks to mafia protection, Billie Holiday had escaped major dangers several times. In 1955, during her concert in Atlanta, Ku Klux Klan members had planned to attack Lady Day, but Luciano's men had learned about this plan in advance and secured the concert. That night, while Billie Holiday was singing Strange Fruit on stage, armed guards were waiting in various parts of the venue. Tallulah Bankhead's support to Billie Holiday was the most emotional. The Broadway star had formed not only a professional but also a personal friendship with Lady Day. In the mid-1950s, Tallulah Bankhead was concerned about Billie Holiday's mental health. Lady Day's heroin addiction was increasing, and FBI pressure was exhausting her. During this period, Tallulah provided not only money but also medical support. Tallulah's biggest contribution was providing legal support to Billie Holiday. Lady Day was constantly in court due to FBI investigations, and Tallulah hired the best lawyers and covered Billie's legal expenses. There were also secret supports given to Billie Holiday by some big names in Hollywood. Charlie Chaplin, Orson Welles, and even Walt Disney supported Lady Day. Charlie Chaplin was particularly impressed by the Strange Fruit song and regularly sent money to Billie. Orson Welles used his media connections to support Lady Day's career. Walt Disney's support was the most unexpected. He made donations to anti-racism civil rights organizations in Billie Holiday's name. After finding the treasure, Ruby Thompson was in a very difficult situation. On one hand, she wanted to fulfill her best friend's final wish. On the other hand, the legal status of this money was unclear. Ruby's biggest fear was the possibility of losing her shop and going to prison if this situation came to light. But Ruby was also thinking about her loyalty to Billie Holiday. Lady Day had trusted her and hidden the money in her shop. After long discussions with Martha Williams, Ruby finally became determined to carry out Lady Day's will. Louis Mackay, as Billie Holiday's last husband, was the legal heir to Lady Day's estate. But the fact that Billie hadn't left money anywhere greatly surprised Louis. This situation was enough to make him suspicious. Louis's visits to Ruby Thompson began to become more frequent. He asked Ruby whether Billie had hidden money in the shop. Ruby answered, "I don't know," each time. But Louis's suspicions were growing. In the fall of 1960, Louis Mackay decided to take harsher measures. He hired a private detective to secretly investigate Ruby's shop. This detective detected fresh digging traces in the back garden. FBI agent Morrison was in a very difficult position after Billie Holiday's death. The records of the money he had given were written in Lady Day's notebook, and if these records came to light, Morrison's career would be over. Morrison's supervisor, Agent Johnson, had opened an investigation into Billie Holiday's financial situation. Johnson had formed a special team to find this money, and Ruby's shop was one of the suspicious places. The most critical moment occurred at the beginning of. Agent Johnson managed to get a court order to officially search Ruby's shop. This situation was very dangerous for both Ruby and Morrison. On the night the court order was issued, Morrison went to the shop to warn Ruby. They had to make an urgent decision that night. Would they move the treasure somewhere else or surrender it to the FBI? Morrison made them a surprising suggestion. He told them to distribute the treasure through legal means before the FBI. If they immediately donated the money to various foundations and destroyed the records, the FBI would find nothing. They worked together for the remaining hours of that night. They immediately transferred the money and the treasure to various civil rights organizations, music schools, and aid foundations. They completely destroyed the notebook. When the FBI searched the shop the next day, they found nothing. There were digging traces in the back garden, but there was no box or money there. Agent Johnson was very suspicious, but couldn't find any concrete evidence he could seize. Ruby Thompson seemed innocent, claiming she knew nothing. Louis McKay also lost hope after the FBI search. If even the FBI couldn't find anything, there really was nothing there. Louis never learned the truth. Morrison experienced great relief. Now his secret was safe, and his career could continue. But he also continued his loyalty to Billie Holiday. In the following years, Morrison continued to give secret support to projects that kept Lady Day's memory alive. Ruby Thompson and Martha Williams had achieved the greatest success. They had fulfilled Billie Holiday's final wish and used her treasure for the right purpose. Thanks to the transfers made that night, hundreds of young musicians would find educational opportunities, and thousands of civil rights activists would receive financial support. One of the first people to benefit from Billie Holiday's treasure was young John Coltrane. In 1961, Coltrane, who was experiencing financial difficulties, was able to establish his own music studio thanks to money he received from an anonymous donor. Coltrane never learned the source of this money, but Lady Day's spirit continued to live in his music. Other beneficiaries included Nina Simone, Mahalia Jackson, and in later years, even Stevie Wonder. All of them had received unexpected financial support during difficult periods of their careers. These supports always came from anonymous donors, but Martha Williams and Ruby Thompson knew very well who they were. The civil rights movement also greatly benefited from this support. Some of the anonymous donations Martin Luther King received during the Montgomery bus boycott came from Billie Holiday's treasure. Thanks to this money, the boycott could continue for a longer time and achieved success. One of the most meaningful uses was the support given to the 19. A significant portion of the anonymous donations for the organization's financial needs came from Lady Day's treasure. When the I Have a Dream speech was given at this march, Billie Holiday's spirit was also among that crowd. By the mid-1970s, the treasure was depleted, but Billie Holiday's legacy had taken on a much larger dimension. The supported musicians now had successful careers, and they too began helping young artists. Thanks to this cycle, Lady Day's struggle continued to grow. When Ruby Thompson died in 1975, there was a surprising crowd at her funeral. Among them were John Coltrane, Nina Simone, and other supported musicians. None of them knew Ruby's real role, but they all felt that she had an important place in the music world. Martha Williams, on the other hand, began gradually revealing her secret after retiring in the 1980s. She told a few music historians she trusted about Billie Holiday's final words, but never gave full details. This way, Lady Day's story began to become legendary. In the 1990s, the stories Martha told began to be discussed in the music world. Billie Holiday experts researched the authenticity of these stories and confirmed that many details were real. Thanks to these researches, Lady Day's secret philanthropy came to light for the first time. Today, the old flower shop on 105th Street no longer exists. Ruby Thompson's shop was demolished in the 1980s, and a modern building was built in its place. But the gardenia flowers in the back garden are still there, now growing in the building's garden area. The new residents of the building wonder why the gardenia flowers in their garden grow so strong and beautiful. They don't know that Billie Holiday's love and struggle were hidden in that soil for years. With each flower bloom, Lady Day's spirit is reborn.